Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
We
All
made
right. So
it.
Yeah,
we're
sorry for the
yes.
delay. I guess I just don't know 2022 how to use basic technology. How are you
No, I don't think
two?
it's you. Yeah, I'm
Good.
good.
How are
Yeah.
you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing really well. Yeah, happy to be
Yes.
here. Honestly. So, how have you
It's good to
been?
see.
Yeah,
Good. Yeah.
looking forward to it.
All
Let's
right.
do it. Are
So
you ready for Pride weekend?
yes.
Is anybody ever ready for Pride?
Yeah. Is anyone ever ready? Unsure. Unsure. Yeah, no one is ever ready. Honestly, until it actually gets here, you just can't prepare.
Right. And I love it
Yeah.
that there's this meme going around that says like it's like a picture of Lady Gaga and she's like drenched, makeup barely on. And so it says like gays, happy Pride, and then it's like drag queens and it's that picture.
Yes.
Definitely. Definitely. I love
All
that.
right. So on that note,
Spot on the money. Absolutely. Yeah.
yes. All right.
Very excited.
So we're gonna get started then with that. So welcome everyone to another part of It Gets Better Digital Pride. This is In Conversation, where we talk about everything that matters to LGBTQ plus youth and also just LGBTQ plus people. Today we have some very special guests from the Queer as Folk cast, which is a show that if you have not watched already, you should definitely check out. So we have Armand Fields, who is an actor, performer, and plays the role of Bussy on Queer as Folk. And then we also have Nyle DiMarco, who is a model, actor, producer, and activist for the deaf community. Just to quickly also introduce myself, I'm Uma, she, they pronouns, and I'm a youth voice for It Gets Better. So I think just to start out, of course, feel free to introduce yourselves more, add a little bit. But as just kind of a fun starter, what would you say your favorite piece of LGBTQ plus representation in media is? Feel free,
Well,
either of you, to start.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I'll jump in. So it is Armand Fields. And, oh, it's okay. And the character's name is Bussy. Just so,
Okay.
Just think of the other name for the kitty cat and then add a
Okay.
B on it instead of a
All
P.
right.
There you go. But I mean, there's so much. Well, there's so much, and then there's at the same time, is there ever enough? You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously, and love our show and what we're doing with it, but also I love Uncle Clifford. You know, on P Valley right now. It's such. I, I love it so much because we get to see this gender variant, gender fluid individual navigate these like spaces that are usually like predominantly like heterosexual and also be immersed within the Black experience. And everyone acknowledges, you know, Clifford's queerness and celebrates it. And they're just, I don't know. So I'm really here for that right now. The new season just came out, so I'm like watching every episode as it comes out.
Nice.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Oh, I can't wait to check that out. Definitely. Definitely. I would say for me, most recently, obviously, other than Queer as Folk, which was so incredible, I have really loved Heartstopper. I've loved Heartstoppers, and it's been so thrilling. I wish that I'd had that growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, there are so many delicious flavors within our spectrum of people in the LGBTQ community, right? And that coming out process looks very different for everyone. The way that I think they respected it in all layers and slices of the characters portrayed on screen was incredible, but also just the movement and the pace of the show felt right. And I loved it. It just felt really, really, really light for me. And I know I'm a little bit late to the game, probably because this was a few weeks ago, but the birdcage, I have to say, I absolutely love the birdcage. And,
Yes.
it's amazing because it's so, both Nathan Lane and Robin Williams are unapologetically queer men. And for that to have been made in the early 90s,
Right.
it's so amazing. And it shows so much of the beauty of what we have in our community in such a lighthearted way that I think we oftentimes take for granted. So those are I'm going to say those are my two of all time.
And it has an Armand in it, so.
Yes.
Yes, right?
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are all incredible pieces. Could not kind of a lot of my own are sort of on that list as well. I would say personally, one of my favorites would also have to be Paris is Burning, just kind of an oldie of queer representation, but paved the way for so many other things. Definitely.
So many, and it created culture.
Exactly. Yeah, it created culture, it spotlighted culture, and it led to a lot of where we are now with media, which is super exciting. Yes. So with that kind of both Armand, Nyle, what would you say sort of LGBTQ plus representation means to you personally? And that's super broad, so feel free to interpret that however you want.
Yeah. Would you like to start, Nyle?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, trying to put that into one answer, I think, is definitely a difficult task to serve up. But, I think in considering LGBTQ plus representation, right, and sort of thinking about, how we behave and how we make an impact in places like, the red carpet, when we have a larger audience, right, as compared to what we're doing at home. For me, for example, I never really saw people in the community who looked like me, right? People who were oftentimes in media and, in places that I find myself now, looked very different. Their mannerisms were very different. They behaved very different. So I thought that I personally couldn't identify with the community, even though we shared a lot of the same attractions, right? It was a process of really learning more about our community and more about the diversity that we had. Right. And people really being themselves authentically, especially in places like, as I always like to say, what you are giving as an interview on the red carpet, being authentically yourself and seeing people that are authentically themselves is making me very excited for the youth that I wish I would have been today. I'm very thrilled for what they have coming. If that makes sense.
Yeah. To add to that, I love that now we can go on the red carpet and can express ourselves so freely and not have to hide behind any of these sort of gender specific clothing. And it was so funny because, the LA premiere was my first big time, my first time walking a big major carpet. And I was just I don't want to wear pants. I was just I can't have my jacket be too boxy. I was just because it's not me, you know what I'm saying? And the fact that I can express myself in that way and just feel empowered and beautiful and gorgeous. I wish that for everybody, even if you're not on a carpet, is to feel your most empowered, gorgeous self. And also to add to that, I was thinking that for me what representation of our community means is that no one feels left behind. No one feels unseen, because I think, I know that when we come out, it's just all we want is people to see us, people to see who we are inside and have that reflected, especially on something like TV and film, because it's such a major part of our lives. And it also, it has a ripple effect and goes out to the masses to show that these type of people exist. These people are present. They are living, they are loving, they are celebrated, they are screwing up, they're, we're here and we're multifaceted. And so, it's just my idea of representation is just to know that there are people in my community, in this community, that are feeling seen and heard and celebrated.
Yeah, completely. And I think with that, I wanted to just sort of go back to that idea, of course, of no one being left behind. And that involving making sure we include and we represent lots of different LGBTQ plus identities and lots of people who fall under the umbrella of being LGBTQ plus, whether it's their sexual identity, their gender identity or presentation, their race, their nationality, their gender, etc. And so I think with it, of course, that involves the media caring about people being authentic. So that sort of leads me to another question for both of you. What do you wish more people in the media industry knew about making authentic representation, or how to produce media that was authentic of different experiences?
Yeah. I mean, do you want to go? Okay.
Please.
Okay. I just wish that when people are creating these things, and, I am so grateful that people want to tell these stories. I just hope and pray that, like, the people who they are wanting to portray on the screen are reflected behind the camera as well, and are in these positions of, like, executive producers, writers, costume people, you know what I'm saying? And actually have conversation with the people portraying these roles. Like, because chances are they cast this person because they fit the role. And so that person's lived experience enhances it. So allow them to offer their lived experiences to portraying these characters. And it's just, yes, get us in these writers' rooms, like get us in these, like, places where things get greenlit, because that's where it's really going to start.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. 100%. This is something that I talk about a lot. And right now, I think what we're seeing in Hollywood is that they're working very hard to invest in LGBTQ stories. But as I've always said, if you want to invest in our stories, you have to invest in our people first, right? We are who bring authenticity to the screen, and we do that from behind the camera. And even in my own experience of developing Deaf U, the docuseries that's now on Netflix, we worked very hard to highlight 6 different experiences at the world's only deaf university. But the way that we were able to find success and to find authentic creation in that show was by empowering people from the community behind the camera, right? We did that by insisting on a ratio of 50-50, right? 50% of the people behind the camera working in the crew had to be from my own community. And when people asked, it was very clear for me to show them that our cast was able to be vulnerable and confident in telling their stories because they were talking to people who were from the same place that they were, right? And they were very disarmed in that sense. But not only that, but they felt safe. They felt comfortable, and they felt a sense of community. It's very key that we're in community always. And I think that's how we build authentic representation on screen.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, it's about safety. It's about kind of this idea as well that if it's not LGBTQ plus people producing, it's them using LGBTQ plus people in a lot of ways to fit their prescribed narrative, and not a narrative that necessarily uplifts LGBTQ people and the LGBTQ plus people and the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah. I just wanted to add something to that. Is like, also allow us to tell other stories, not just our own personal stories. We're all incredibly talented, versatile. We're actors at the end of the day. Yes, this is part of our identity, but we're actors, and our job as actors is to be able to tell all different types of stories. So why just limit us to only LGBTQIA plus content? Like, allow us to go there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Yeah, like with that, I mean, I'm not personally an actor, but I'm an activist. I'm a writer sometimes, and so and I'm a student. So with that, it's about also just exploring stories beyond kind of the prescribed, very cliche LGBTQ plus story. In a lot of ways, there's diversity within personal stories, and also going beyond personal stories. Of course, like LGBTQ plus people can have imagination. We have great imagination. So it's not all about just us telling that one kind of prescribed story or what box we're allowed to fit into. So just a little bit kind of to segue, I wanted to ask you all a couple specific questions for each of you. And then of course, we're going to talk about Queer as Folk because I'm very excited to. But to start off with Nyle, you're of course both openly LGBTQ plus and deaf. And how do you find that those two identities intersect in your work on screen?
Well, I think in coming into this industry, I made it at the right time. I'm very thankful that the door was open when it was. In meeting with so many writers and producers and actors, they often didn't want to exclude part of my identity, which was fantastic. Being able to write that into a character is really great, and not having to really split that. So in a way, I do love it. I love that, I have intersectionality to who I am, and that it's something that I can leverage, right, in a way that a story can make sense. And, also in providing input, I'm able to really bring two different perspectives often than many other people in the writers' rooms. It's really sort of how I've framed it for myself. And so far, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I missed the end of that a little bit because I accidentally dropped my camera. But besides that, absolutely. And I also did want to transition a little bit to something with Armand, that this isn't necessarily directly related to that, but it is still about self-expression and the importance of that, and also not boxing into those specific narratives that you've, in addition to doing a lot of acting, have worked as a drag queen. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experiences in that, and also what role you think that drag can play in self-expression and uplifting the LGBTQ plus community.
Ooh, that's a doozy. So I've done acting since I was a kid, you know what I'm saying? And then, of course, when you come out and, when you're in musical theater and you kind of are feminine, like, it was just sort of like one of those things where I was like, it was kind of predictable that I was gonna do drag. So I always like hesitated from it or like shied away from it. I was like, no, I don't wanna do that, blah, 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 blah. And it was really like I was doing a play that was like my gateway to drag. It was a play about Milli Vanilli, and I was one of the guys. And so I had to wear a wig and makeup and obviously lip sync, no shade to them, but it was like my like gateway into drag. And so that's when I started like playing around with it. It's funny because I was looking at all those pictures. This was like 10 years ago. And, I started I was like one of those like bathroom drag queens, taking selfies and like playing around, figuring things out. And then it wasn't really until like 2018 when I had like moved back from LA. I tried LA out. I went back to Chicago and working in restaurant industry and just miserable, and I said to myself, I was like, I can either continue on this path or I can just like bet on myself, take the risk, you know what I'm saying? And so I quit my job at restaurants and I was like, I'm just gonna pursue acting and drag full time. And it was really like, I immediately just went into like hustler mode, and like I entered every competition in Chicago that I could. And I won Roscoe's, drag race in 2018. And that was like, that kind of what catapulted me into the drag scene in Chicago. And it was really interesting because it was just like, there was a shift almost as far as like how I went into rooms, not just the audition rooms, but just rooms in general. I sort of had like opened the floodgate and just like allowed myself to just be my like queer femme self and like find this other new way to like represent myself. And that did something with acting, casting directors could sense that. And they like, when you walk into a room unapologetically you, they have no choice but to look at you and hopefully book you. But it was just like, and then after that moment, it was just sort of like my acting and my drag started to merge. And then Armand and my drag persona, Cleo, started to merge. Because it was just like, all of these things are me. You know what I'm saying? Take the makeup off, I'm still Cleo. Put the makeup on, I'm still Armand. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, it's all one and the same. But it's just like, for me, drag is, it's hard to like, just like sum it up into like a one sentence. You know what I'm saying? But drag is empowering. I mean, if I had to pick one word, it's empowering. But also drag queens within the community, drag queens, drag kings, this performance of drag performer, you know, they are sort of the mirror to, you know, our community, our society, and is also just an emergence of the divine energies, male, feminine, neither, like all together, you know what I'm saying? And it's presented in a way where it's just like a spectacle sometimes, and sometimes it's not, you know, but it's just like, it's still this art form that people are like putting themselves vulnerably on that stage or in that Zoom or wherever they do their drag, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, and being able to witness that, I feel like does something to the viewer, but it also does something to the person performing. It's almost like, you know, when I think about drag, is I sometimes look at it as like an energy healer in a way. And so I always, whenever I get on stage, I'm just like, I want to just like heal this audience. I just want to like bless them with joy and a moment of just like, they don't have to worry about whatever's going on, and they could just like live in this like next 5-6 minutes of this performance, but just like be a vessel of light. That's what I always want to do when I perform. But it's just like one of those things where when you're a healer, when you give healings, you're healing yourself as well. And so drag's been really healing for me in that way.
Yeah, I love that kind of idea of drag as healing, both as self-healing and also as community healing, especially because I know myself and so many people have benefited from drag in our coming out process. And now with it more sort of public, or in a lot of ways more mainstream, I know that it's going to make a much kind of bigger impact for a lot of LGBTQ plus people in terms of being young and being able to kind of see yourself or see aspects of LGBTQ plus culture and have that healing. And with that, I definitely kind of want to talk a little bit about Queer as Folk, which in a lot of ways is a show about healing and a show about community. So for both of you, sort of, what has been your favorite part about working on the show?
Ooh, you know, I'd have to say probably my favorite part, just in general, you know, we're working with other disabled people on set. You know, it's such a pivotal thing, right? I mean, you know, I'm disabled, I'm queer, but still in Hollywood, you know, we don't feel like the moment has arrived in so many ways, right? To be able to work with Ryan O'Connell, one, you know, incredible pleasure. But, you know, when he wrote my episode, you know, with so many people of various disabled backgrounds, you know, both in front of and behind the screen, it just really was, it was just a really incredible experience. You know, I think right now, right, we really want to see more intersectionality being represented. We want to see their stories being told. You know, it's what we're working for every day. You know, streamers are really starting to empower that and empower that process. And so I was thrilled to see it, but that'd be my favorite moment for sure.
Obviously for me, getting to play a role like Bussy is a dream come true, you know? Just because I feel like a lot of TV film, whenever they book a drag queen for or have a drag role in the show, you never really get to like see the person out of drag. They're always just like, that's the drag queen, that's what they do. You don't know anything about their lives, you know? So getting to play a role like Bussy where I was in drag, and then there was moments where I wasn't in drag, and then you get to learn more about my like life and outside of Babylon. That was an honor, because it's just like again, on this platform to portray, you know, to represent drag queens in our culture is just like an honor. And obviously to have a TV budget to do drag, because drag is not cheap. Drag is not cheap, you know, and like the people, oh my gosh, the artists who work on our show, from Christina and Courtney in costumes to Bailey and Michelle, who did my makeup, like, and Everett, and to people who did hair, Randy, Shoni, my wig girl, like, it was just like everybody was so just like bringing their A game, firing on all engines, and we got to all come together and just like create these looks. And like that's what I love. Like I look at like TV, film, or entertainment in general as sort of like a mandala, you know what I'm saying? And like everyone's coming in from different, there's all these like interests and X's, and we're all coming in to like kind of create this like beautiful thing. So yeah, that was two of my favorite parts, I guess.
Yeah. And absolutely with that, the looks on Queer as Folk are incredible.
Yes.
Just seeing them, you know there's a great team behind those. And I also do just want to go back as well to Niall's answer with that. I'm also disabled, and so watching that episode was amazing for me. Just to see kind of this representation of the disabled community, of also kind of being able to be queer and disabled at the same time, because often it is very difficult to sort of fit in the community in that way. And so I think sort of with that, I wanted to talk a little bit also about some of the themes in Queer as Folk, of this idea of chosen family and diverse chosen family. And that's something that we've started to see a little bit more in kind of LGBTQ plus focused media, but not always, but it's such an important part of the LGBTQ plus experience. So sort of with that, what does chosen family look like to you, especially in the media industry?
Well, I would say my chosen family, obviously, aside from my lovely deaf family, but, within the world of media, it's a lot of really close friends who are allies. It's people who are allies within the industry who, have been there and have stood there. And, we've had to work on projects together where, I've been able to pull from, their advocacy for me. I've been able to pull resources from them, as they advocate essentially as an ally. If you consider over the last, 7 years, right, it has not really been an easy journey to get to this place, but certainly it's a very tough mental journey to find people who really vibe with you, right, who are sort of on the same level and really get it. So I always want to keep those people close, and they're very highly regarded in my world, and I know that if I need to reach out for advice, I can do that, but I don't think they always have to be certainly from one sort of slice of life. Many of them are straight, but they're incredible allies, and they're just really wonderful.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I would not be here today if it was not for my chosen family. Like, I love my birth family, and I'm grateful for them. But, being a young queer kid from Oklahoma City, Bible Belt, moving to Chicago for the first time, and being immersed in so much, it is really easy to sort of like lose your sensibility, you know what I'm saying? But thankfully along the way, it's been wonderful because I have met so many wonderful people who have stuck around and who have allowed me to love them. I've allowed them to love me, and just like let them in, and vice versa, and support me. Like, it's just, yeah. I have so many mothers and so many, aunties and just like sisters, brothers, siblings, everybody. Like, it's just, I'm truly, truly blessed. And, it is important for people to find their chosen family and identify them, because it's just like, it takes a village, not just to raise a child, but just to be a human in this world. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, we never stop growing. We never stop learning. So it's just like, we need to surround ourselves with, our people.
Yeah, completely. And sort of with that, in addition to the communities that you've built for yourself within media, of course, entertainment, as you've all said, can be something that's very draining and very grueling as a profession. And so sort of in addition to that building of community, what would you say that your self-care process is for when it gets difficult to make sure that you're feeling like your best self?
Nyle, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, my self-care process. You know, for me, it's hitting a trail with my bike. You know, I really like a nice long hike. I love to camp, you know, and I love sports. That's, you know, I'm a pretty basic boy. You know, it's who I am. You know, I'm very happy with those. And, you know, I always like to get a little bit of respite before coming back into this cutthroat industry.
For me, I love just like taking care of self, like skincare, doing all of that, just like investing in my skin and just like drinking water and, you know, dancing. Dancing is like a huge thing for me. I know it was, I was in New York for the press and it was just like after LA and then New York and performing, I was like, I went out Saturday night and just like sweated it all out. And I was just like, and that's a form of self care for me too. And, you know, just some good food, you know, a massage. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think food, water, exercise, all of those things
Yes.
for all of us. Yeah. I also, yeah, I'm a big hiker, so that definitely resonates with me as well. Um, I did also, because I know we only have a couple more minutes, I wanted to touch on just a couple more things. And one of the things also, of course, is just going back to Queer as Folk more so. It depicts some very important, but very often scary or terrifying realities of what it is to be queer today, in terms of gun violence, and also just it's framed in the context of so many threats to LGBTQ plus life. We're seeing a lot of threats to drag right now, with people trying to brand it as offensive or inappropriate. We're seeing so many threats to LGBTQ plus students in schools, especially transgender students. And so, sort of with this, what role do you think that media, like Queer as Folk, could maybe play in contributing to these conversations about LGBTQ plus rights and LGBTQ plus identity?
Mm. I also see Johnny, I think, is here. Johnny Civilly.
Oh
Johnny, you
yeah,
over there?
let me see if I can get him to join. Right. Yeah. Sends a request. I'll try to get him to join. We'll do that.
Yeah, I don't think you can do 5, can you?
Um, I don't think so. So maybe if anyone wants to jump off after this question, I can have them on for a sec.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, if anyone wants to start with this question, and then yeah, we can talk a bit about this.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So just kind of this idea, of course, that Queer as Folk as a show, it talks about so many very important themes, but also so many very scary realities of what it is to be LGBTQ plus today, in terms of gun violence, in terms of threats of hate speech or hate crimes, and also it's a show that's now being premiered at a time when there's so many very legal threats to LGBTQ plus people, with attack on curriculum,
Yes.
people trying to frame drag as inappropriate, people working to cut how much LGBTQ plus identity can be discussed in schools, and also a lot of attacks on transgender young people. So with that kind of, what kind of role should media, especially media like Queer as Folk, play in these conversations and in kind of still working towards LGBTQ plus rights?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, to be honest with you, I think it really goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. You know, media, I think, you know, is really one of the largest drivers in changing people's perspective, right? If you look at what we see in our everyday life, and just from the things that we talk about to the things that we, you know, believe in and put our weight behind, media has a huge responsibility to change and support those things, you know, oftentimes, unfortunately, but also fortunately in many other ways. you know, I think that media should be empowering people essentially to tell their stories and have these discussions. But, you know, I always say we see diversity in our everyday lives. We see it at the grocery store. We see it at the mall. We see it getting coffee in the morning, right? Everywhere we go. Let's make that what we see on the TV every day, right? That should be a direct reflection, and it should be empowering everyone that we see, you know, throughout our daily lives, essentially, to tell their own stories. And I think, you know, by empowering those people, it's guaranteed that the audience at home is going to find something relatable in it, right? And if we're telling authentically who we are, and if we're allowing an audience at home to see us and thereby see them, right, we can have a wider conversation. I think we can change a lot of perspectives, you know, like what's been happening recently, certainly with the rollbacks of laws, and with, you know, certainly the gun violence. It's now, to me, as a call, you know, more than ever, that we need those stories to be told, essentially, to change what we're seeing, you know, as our course of history right now.
I think also too is that, like, history has proven that sorry, let me fix that, that we are resilient. We are strong. We are also soft and love. And we don't back down from a fight. And, you know, there's times to fight and there's times to retreat and to, you know, heal. But I think we're in a great place now. I mean, not a great place in that sense, but like great in the fact that we have so many outlets where we can speak our truth. We can be vocal about who we are and what we are and how we love, and like not let anyone take that away, not let anyone deny that. And so it's just like, the media plays absolutely a large part in it, because that's, like I said earlier in this conversation, that's what people see, that's what people consume, you know. And so it's just like, as long as we're out there on these things, on, you know, on the TV screen, on your computer screen, you know, it's just like, you will never be able to deny us.
Yeah, completely. There's that idea sort of that medium is the message. And if you're able to reach people and reach people where they are, that's going to give them understanding of what these kind of terrible situations, how to respond to them in a lot of ways. It shows that need for healing, that need for joy, even in these really kind of terrible times for LGBTQ plus people in a lot of ways, where it's very scary to be young and LGBTQ plus. And so I think that's a really important point, that first, it's representation, it's giving people that understanding that people like us exist. And then it's also giving people like us the understanding that our stories can be told, that their emotions are valid, and that this kind of her story, like you said, is a process that we're all going to be part of, and that we can all live through and thrive through together in a lot of ways. Yeah. I think because we only have a couple more minutes left also, is there anything you all want to add, talk about in terms of media, anything else?
No, this has been really fantastic. Nothing to add. This has really, really, really been great. I've enjoyed this. I'm thrilled, you know, for Pride weekend in New York, but I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yes, it has been. It's been really lovely being here and getting to talk about the show, and I just hope that people watch it and support it, and hopefully we get a season 2.
Yes, we are all hoping for that.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you both, Armand, Nyle, for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone watching enjoyed it. We'll also be saving this. I know some people asked about that in the chat, of course. And happy Pride to everyone. If you're in New York, happy Pride. If you're in DC like me, I hope you enjoyed it last weekend. We already had ours.
And NOLA will be having Black Gay Pride next weekend, so yes.
Yeah. So with that, happy Pride, and of
Awesome.
course, when it gets better, we'll be continuing our digital Pride. So join us next week for another In Conversation. We'll have some other special guests. And tomorrow we'll also be live on our YouTube with Pride and Fit. So thank you all. Thank you, Gray, also for this. I really enjoyed this, and yeah, happy Pride to everyone.
Happy Pride. Thank you
Happy
so
Pride.
much. Thank you, Ebony.
Happy Pride. Take care,
Take
everybody.
care, everyone.